What is your name?
Kris Kringle.
You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. Gather round. He's making a list, checking it twice. Gonna find out who's naughty and nice. Santa Claus is coming to town.
Well, I don't know if he's really real.
Yes, he is real. I think he's real.
I didn't actually see him, but I saw his reindeer galloping by the moon. My cousin was sleeping on the floor. He touched Santa Claus's hand.
I heard someone's putting in the stockings, and I didn't want to go look because I didn't want to I didn't want to disturb it.
I do recall the Christmas where I heard him. My brothers and I would fall asleep at the top of the stairs. I remember I heard him.
You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming. You mean the big fat man with a long white beard. He's coming to town.
Santa is the best combination of an adult who watches out for you, who can provide the gifts of your dreams, but he's also a pal.
Santa's kind of a miracle, and he can happen to you. I mean, kids from the age of 3 or 4, they have that 4-year period where they actually believe in miracles.
You could say he's over 1,700 years old. He is loved unconditionally, never comes empty-handed, and is magically everywhere at once, one night a year. Santa Claus knows all about us, so maybe it's time we uncover the real story about him.
His real name is St. Nicholas.
I've heard the stories of Saint Nick who tossed gold through people's windows or chocolate or whatever.
In a way, Santa is nearly as old as Christianity itself. But he didn't always look like the man we know today. St. Nicholas, a 4th century bishop born in Asia Minor, was said to be a miracle worker full of goodwill towards men and women.
St. Nicholas was not a mythological figure. He was a historical figure. He lived, and his actions are a part of the living church.
Like Santa Claus, St. Nicholas was a friend to children. There are many examples of this, but one stands out. It happens that there was a very poor family with 3 young girls of marrying age. At the time, young women needed an enormous dowry to attract a husband. Without a husband to provide stability, they might eventually be sold into slavery or prostitution. As the legend goes, St. Nicholas visited this family's home, tossing 3 bags of his own gold into their windows and doorways. 1 bag landed in a stocking the family had hung up to dry. And that's where the tradition of hanging Christmas stockings is said to have come from. St. Nicholas was also a hero to grown-ups in need. He was once traveling on a ship that encountered a huge ocean gale. All seemed lost when, as the vessel foundered, St. Nicholas asked the terrified passengers and crew to pray.
As soon as they finished their prayer, the storm ceased and the seas were calm. And this is one of the reasons why there is the tradition of St. Nicholas being the patron saint of seafarers.
Not only the rescuer of sailors, he became a protector of victims of injustice, and in somewhat of a contradiction, a symbol for pawnbrokers who have used the 3 bags of gold as their identifying symbol through the years. By the Middle Ages, long after his death, St. Nicholas was so widely known that more churches were named after him than for all of Christ's apostles combined. Not that popularity would have mattered to him.
St. Nicholas did not seek to get this credit, but he was doing what he lived and what his faith taught him. And I think this is very important, that we don't corrupt that pure spirit of giving sacrificially.
In life, St. Nicholas was gaunt, not jolly and plump with twinkling eyes. In many ways, he was the complete opposite of the way he's portrayed today as Santa Claus.
there's really nothing Christian about him. He was always there. He was always old and always jolly. Not a bishop, not a saint, but a magical, large-scale elf.
Perhaps he didn't bring bags of gold, but by the 16th century, European children did believe that St. Nicholas brought them gifts on his own Saint's Day, December 6th. Fearing that St. Nicholas was becoming more popular to children than Jesus, German Protestant reformers discouraged the belief and created a new one, Christkindl, who also brought presents to children, but he brought them on Christmas. In English, Christkindl became Kris Kringle. But the Dutch stuck with the original, sort of. Sinterklaas, Dutch for St. Nicholas, was a mysterious figure who brought gifts for the nice, while his mischievous sidekick, Black Peter, dealt with the naughty. In one form or another, all of these creations were just old St. Nick. But who created Santa Claus? Turns out, that's a totally New York story. The man who would be Claus was shaped by many cultures, and they all brought a piece of him to America. But it was a group of wealthy New Yorkers who transformed him into the figure we know today. By the early 1800s, landowning families in New York City found their once tranquil estates surrounded by a growing underclass, with a bothersome Christmas custom.
The old European tradition of the poor going around and drinking and begging and demanding entry into the homes of the rich, and the corresponding obligation of the rich to let them in. All of this was getting out of hand.
In the opinion of the rich, New York needed a new tradition, so they combined the legends of St. Nicholas and Sinterklaas. The old legends were appealing to them because they exemplified the idea that it was better to wait at home for a gift than demand one in the streets. The lesson caught on, and because Americans change everything, Sinterklaas became Santa Claus. The man who gave Santa much more than a name change was Clement Clarke Moore, who by happy accident was inspired to write one of the most famous poems in the world. He called it A Visit from St. Nicholas. It has come into common lore as The Night Before Christmas.
On the afternoon of Christmas Eve, Clement Moore decided to buy a Christmas turkey for some needy families who lived in the area. He got in his sleigh, and on the way, it must have been the jingling of the bells and the horses. You can just imagine that afternoon in 1822 with Clement Moore listening to all of these sounds and feelings of the day, and this poem comes into mind.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there.
And then the man of the house is just suddenly and rudely awakened in the middle of the night by a great noise and lights. Just the kind of thing that would have likely awakened a man like Clement Moore in reality, with bands of beggars coming wassailing around his property.
He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack.
He's a figure who comes uninvited and breaks into a house, but he doesn't come to threaten, he doesn't come to demand, he doesn't come to take. Instead, he comes to give.
He wears like a funky outfit.
He has a big white beard.
A white beard, a red jacket.
He has a big suit and has a big tummy.
Gray hair, lovely white stuff.
Moore's poem was a hit, and while it described what Santa looked like, it had no illustrations. No one actually saw a picture of him until a small book was published in 1848 by a man named Henry Underdunk.
And to make it even more appealing for children, Henry Underdunk commissioned the wood engraver Theodore Boyd to create illustrations of Santa Claus to go along with the story. Boyd is believed to have used a local Dutch handyman as his model for St. Nicholas, which is why you see a very strong Dutch influence in the appearance.
The text of that poem establishes Santa Claus in a certain way, but it's not the way that we think of him today. He's tiny. He's a tiny old elf. He drives a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer.
It wasn't until the 1860s that the modern version of Santa Claus started showing up on people's doorsteps. He appeared in Harper's Weekly, the largest circulation periodical of that era, in drawings from the pen of the great American cartoonist Thomas Nast. Using the Moore poem as a blueprint, Thomas Nast created the look of the Santa we know today.
He was very cautious about not changing too much because the public had a sense that there was a certain image of Santa Claus which they could buy. And so most of the images that we see of Thomas Nast's first Santa Clauses are short, stubby, the rosy cheeks, a stump of a pipe which he enlarges.
Nast drew a man both merry and bright, with a face bitten by the winter cold, yet with a warm inner glow, a face for winking and laughing that came on the scene when America needed it most. In the 1860s, as the country was reeling from the Civil War.
The first depictions that Thomas Nast drew of Santa Claus very often offered children's toys which were coming out of the tradition of the Civil War. There were military belts for children, bayonets, guns, there were dolls for little girls, and in order to encourage the soldiers in the field and the folks at home who are waiting for news from the soldiers, he creates a Santa Claus dressed in the stars and stripes of the American flag, a Santa Claus visiting the soldiers, giving them gifts and distributing goodwill and news from home.
Because this Santa Claus was such a symbol of hope and so embodied the American spirit, his importance to wartime morale was invaluable. But Santa didn't stop there. He only got bigger. Santa was entering the big time. Thomas Nast was not only the first illustrator to make Santa's face famous. Along the way, he gave Santa a workshop for making toys, a home at the North Pole, that famous ledger book that tells him who's been naughty and who's been nice. And perhaps most significant of all, he turned Santa from a jolly little old elf to a man-sized spirit of giving. Finally, anticipating department store Santas everywhere, Nast gave Santa a lap with plenty of room for sitting. But now that he was Mr. Big, life wasn't just a bowl full of jelly. Santa found himself in a jam. What about those chimneys?
Here it is, Christmas Eve, and we don't even know if Santa Claus is going to make it down the chimney. What'll we do?
Well, let us consider the question here. How does big fat Santa Claus get down those skinny chimneys?
I don't know how he does it, but I think he just uses magic. Maybe he could just slip under the window from a door.
Let us look at it from another angle.
I actually had this secret fear that Santa wouldn't come because he didn't have a chimney.
Tough on kids without chimneys. We somehow got around that. I remember thinking, because we had a very small apartment when I was growing up, and I remember thinking he'd have to come through the window.
As Santa entered the 20th century, he hadn't yet become an icon, but his reputation was growing, and perhaps the most enduring addition to his legend was about to hit the scene. Rudolph was born in 1939 when Montgomery Ward department stores commissioned a book to give away to children. It featured a new reindeer with a shiny nose and a gift for navigation. There was some thought to naming the little fellow Rollo or Reginald, but those wouldn't do.
Rudolph, 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 the red-nosed reindeer.
Rudolph. Once more.
Not only is Rudolph the only reindeer every child can immediately name, he's the only one to get his own television special.
And you've less than a week in which to do it.
You mean?
Rudolph, with your nose so bright, you've 6 days left to set things right.
I'll do my best, Santa.
With the success of Rudolph as a department store promotion, other big commercial enterprises sought Santa's blessing, and his career as a pitchman soared.
What seems to be leading the gift lists this year, Santa?
Elgin Petite watches.
The image was invented by the artist that did the Coca-Cola trays. They had this wonderful Santa, that guy with those big burly hands and the little Coke bottle. It really set up, and it's so typical of American culture. We kind of combined Santas from all different variations into this homogenized version.
In the 1920s, Haddon Sundblom, one of the greatest illustrators for advertising art in the United States, starts thinking, how could he illustrate Santa Claus to sell a product? And the best way to present this was, Santa Claus was the hardest working stiff on the planet. After delivering 1 billion packages to children all over the world, the guy needed a break, and he needed something to drink, and Coca-Cola was the pause that refreshed.
Ow! So you think Santa will like these red and green M&Ms?
I don't know. I never met the guy. He does exist!
They do exist. Santa?
From the beginning of his career, Santa has had a very double relationship with the commercial culture with which he interacts. On the one hand, the commercial culture has appropriated Santa Claus to provoke people into wanting presents and into buying presents.
Person has to deliver many, many gifts. Doesn't want to worry. Doesn't want to break the bank. Goes to post office.
The other side of it is that Santa also is a figure who magically removes himself from the commercial marketplace. Santa obviously never goes shopping. There's no financial exchange involved. It's a very curious and complex double role.
Ho, ho, ho! Ho, ho, ho!
Another marketing ploy that has been paying off for over a century has been the department store Santa, who listens to the wishes of the good and not so good.
Hey, Santa, what's shaking, man?
What's your name, partner? Little partner?
Well, I'm Bart Simpson. Who the hell are you?
I'm jolly old Saint Nick.
Oh, yeah? We'll just see about that.
In 1890, a local merchant in Brockton, Massachusetts, was looking for a way to attract customers. James Edgar had tried dressing up as clowns, war heroes, even Uncle Sam. But when he dressed for the first time as Santa, the gimmick worked. Soon children were coming from as far away as Rhode Island to see him. Santa began popping up in stores all over the country, not to mention community centers and meeting houses. If you pass a building at Christmas and see a crowd of kids, chances are Santa's there and taking his job seriously.
It's not a small responsibility to be Santa. A lot of joy comes with it, a lot of hard work, and a lot of checking of the list, you know that.
I said, hey, Mom, do you think that Santa will give me a little reindeer that's a fly? And they said, of course not. I said, okay, never mind.
Well, you never know. I would say some of the most memorable moments I've had with children when they're talking to Santa, and Santa gets the idea that maybe they like a certain toy or a certain gift, and Santa will guess at that, and if he hits it, it's like magic.
Sometimes the visits work out, and sometimes they just don't.
What do you want for Christmas, little boy?
My mind had gone blank. Frantically, I tried to remember what it was I wanted. I was blowing it.
Come on, kid. How about a nice football?
Football? What's a football? Without conscious will, my voice squeaked out.
Football. Okay, get him out of here.
A football? Oh, no! What was I doing? Wake up, stupid! Wake up! No!
It's a very much of a commercial world. Santa Claus is commercialized just like everything else. I think it's a healthy character, somebody to believe in, somebody who cares for you, and he seems never to come empty-handed, which is terribly nice.
Now that he'd turned Madison Avenue into Santa Claus Lane, Hollywood Boulevard was next. Santa was about to become a movie star. Santa was already a pretty good salesman when his influence reached deeper into pop culture. He had been a leading man in movies since the first known film of Santa Claus was made in 1903. It was called A Fantasy Actually Filmed in Northern Alaska. Though a little odd-looking, maybe even a little scary, there he was with all his familiar trappings. And in 1947, as we recovered from the horrors of the Second World War, he stole the show again in the classic that taught us there's nothing wrong with believing. The film that broke the gingerbread mold, the granddaddy of all Santa movies, Miracle on 34th Street.
What is your name?
Kris Kringle.
Where do you live?
That's what this hearing will decide.
You believe that you're Santa Claus?
Of course.
The movie works terribly well, predominantly because of the story and the wonderful cast. I don't think there's ever been anybody who played Santa Claus more believably than Edmund Gwenn. Of course, he won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for playing Kris Kringle. And Natalie Wood, who was about 7 or 8 when they shot the picture, she actually did believe that that actor, Edmund Gwenn, was Santa Claus.
Though some were happy to be Santa, others, like the Grinch, were trying to foil him.
He chuckled and clucked. What a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I'll look just like St. Nick.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel.
Santa continues to be a box office draw, as new voices, raised on the old films, add to the legend.
The best thing about being Santa in these movies is that because of the preparation, kids don't ever confuse me with him, and the transition is so complete. What's really startling is the effect I have when I'm in full regalia on the set. And that means the boots, the gloves, the hat, the whole thing. I get adults twinkling when they see me. I come out of the trailer and there's nothing but happiness in people's faces. It's such a tremendous icon for goodness.
Do you want a cookie, Santa?
Do I want a cookie? Yes.
It was difficult not to be swept up in this. And these children, especially in the second one, we had 200 or 300 extras. They didn't have any idea because they go, Santa's here, Santa's here. Especially the little ones. This is great. I'm doing a movie with Santa.
Let's think. Take the hat off. Too much counterweight.
Thanks, Santa. You're the man.
That's why they give me the big belly, so I don't fall over.
I had so much fun answering questions, then I realized what a responsibility. Now that kid, no, I talked to Santa. You know, the rest of his life, people are gonna go, it's not one of these Hollywood stories where I know the guy that knew the guy. That kid, I did a movie with him. Yeah, the reindeer eat gumdrops.
What's the matter with you people? We're working here.
He's really funny and I enjoy working with him. I mean, I have to work with him every day at the North Pole, but I also like working with him on the movie. Yeah, it's fun.
And never really considered, certainly, how much I loved playing this and how, how sweet this guy is and how wonderful it is to be Santa. The magic of his being is important, that he's just totally about one thing, which is bringing happiness to children.
You better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. Gather round.
I can see them when they're sleeping. I know when they're awake.
My goodness. You know if they're bad or good?
So you tell them to be good, for goodness sake.
Every year, children wait patiently for their favorite Santa TV specials. That is, if they don't already own the videos.
Golly.
Don't kill me, Dad. I didn't know it was you.
Nobody knows. It's a secret. I didn't get my bonus this year, but to keep the family from missing out on Christmas, I'd do anything.
I'll say, Dad.
And even the kids on the wrong side of Santa's list can't resist the big guy.
Now, let's not get mushy, son. I still have a job to do. Hey, little one, Santa's back. Ho, ho, yo!
On Christmas Eve, many years ago, I lay quietly on my bed. I was listening for a sound a friend had told me I'd never hear. The ringing bells of Santa's sleigh.
In the tradition of the most beloved Santa stories, the ones that captured the imaginations of a generation of children, the 1980s brought a new tale, The Polar Express. It's the story of a young boy's journey to the North Pole to meet Santa, and of the magic of believing.
The Polar Express was practically unique in the stories I've written because, this may sound a little corny, but it felt more like a memory than a contrived effort to drive a story. I just felt like, I don't know, could that have actually happened in my life?
Across the circle, the elves moved apart, and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly. He marched over to us and, pointing to me, said, "Let's have this fellow here." He jumped into a sleigh. I sat on Santa's knee and he asked, "Now, what would you like for Christmas?"
It's a story that I'm interested in, even though I'm, over 50. I love the idea of a world where something like that was possible, and the idea that there was a character who could do this, that this could actually be accomplished.
Santa Claus has found his way onto bestseller lists and onto Hollywood's A-list. The only other pop culture list to conquer is the music charts, and he's been there and done that too.
Because at Christmas time, everywhere I go, any department store, any store in general that plays music always has Santa baby, slip a sable under the tree for me. Been an awful good girl, Santa baby, and hurry down the chimney tonight. Oh, I love it. Because I never lose my sense of humor about Santa.
Santa baby, a 54 convertible to light blue. I'll wait up for you, dear Santa baby, so hurry down the chimney tonight.
I've never lost my sense of humor about singing that particular song. Every man to me is like a Santa baby. I want to hug and kiss him and tease him and make him feel wanted. So he will come down the chimney tonight.
With Santa, I think it gives reassurance that he comes every year. You can always count on him. You can say to Santa, "I've been good," or "I've been trying to be good," and you can ask for anything.
Dear Santa Claus, I wish I could see you.
Hello,
I hope you got
it's
my
me.
other letter.
I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Dear
Do
Santa,
elves buy magic?
you know who I am, but just in case you forgot, my name is Hector.
I know that I have been quite naughty in the last couple of days, but please don't give
How
me...
much do you weigh? Who's your favorite
I like to
reindeer?
get a coat
I like
for
comics.
myself and my brother James.
That
even
is
though
all
he
I want.
bothers me a lot.
Please get me what you can. Love, me. P.S. I really, really want a kitten.
We are an official government organization, and we do know that there is a Santa Claus.
For generations, children have poured out their hopes and dreams in letters to Santa. Question is, where do the letters go? Well, Santa has helpers all over the world.
The miracle on 34th Street did have a lot to do with having mail come in to the New York Post Office. Operation Santa Claus began over 80 years ago when clerks in the money order division saw that there were letters written to Santa that they figured were not going to be answered.
Operation Santa Claus is a program open to the public, encouraging people to read letters addressed to Santa, take one or more with them, and become a secret Santa.
I had been searching for a real way to experience the Santa side of Christmas for years, and discovered walking into the post office is this huge room filled with people all tapping each other on the shoulder saying, oh, did you see this? Oh, did you read that? Oh, look at this. I'm going to answer this. And what I realized immediately was how amazing that people got together in this way, but also how many letters there were to be answered.
Post offices around the world receive letters to Santa, but upwards of 250,000 letters come into Operation Santa Claus in New York City alone.
We open them up and see if there's an address inside. We try to answer all the kids' letters.
But with so many letters, the post office is always looking for more Santa's helpers.
Dear Santa Claus, I still believe in you, but I don't always get gifts from you or my parents. My parents don't have the money to because they're busy paying the rent. I'd really like you to give me something so I can fit in my school.
It's wonderful how the relationship between Santa and a child is. It's a very magical, it's an indescribable feeling that you get when you read these letters, to know the innocence behind them and how they're asking for help to the person who helps all, Santa Claus.
Here is a special bulletin from the North American Air Defense Command headquarters. I've just picked up an unusual unknown object on the radar scope over the North Pole. It's headed south at a very high rate of speed.
Even the U.S. military keeps tabs on Santa. In 1955, a Sears store in Colorado set up a Santa hotline for kids. But instead of the hotline number, the newspaper accidentally printed the phone number for NORAD, the North American Air Defense Command. On Christmas Eve, the soldiers and staff normally in charge of Homeland Security found their phones ringing off the hook, kids wanting to know where in the world Santa Claus was. Suddenly, NORAD was in the Santa tracking business.
Hello, Bandit Leader. This is Applejack Control. No sighting yet. Hold it. Stand by. I have an unknown contact.
When we first started tracking Santa back in the 50s, all we had was radar and fighters. We would be able to pick him up as he was coming over the pole, but we'd have to send up fighters to ensure it was actually him. Now we're kind of lucky because not only do we have a better capability with our radar, far more advanced technologies, but we also have satellites that are able to take a look down onto the Earth and actually see the infrared image of Rudolph as Santa lifts off from the North Pole.
Today, children can log on to NORAD's website and see where Santa is on Christmas Eve, which is everywhere. Santa is truly a citizen of the world. In Japan, he is Santa-san. As he arrives in China, where he is greeted with paper lanterns, he is called Dunche Lao Ren, or Christmas Old Man. In Italy, it is the familiar Babbo Natale. In England, children throw their wish lists into the fireplace so the draft can carry them to Father Christmas. In France, Santa is known as Père Noël. And in Russia, he is still known as Saint Nicholas. There is always speculation as to how Santa does it. How can he possibly visit the over 2 billion children in the world in just one night?
Maybe it's just that this friend of his, the moon, stays as long as he has to be before morning comes, and he tells the sun to not come until Santa's back into the North Pole.
Santa does have a long night. When you think about it, he has about 1/1000th of a second to jump down the chimney, fill the stockings, drop off a few presents, maybe even take a phone call, and refuel.
I put milk out and cookies out for him. Sometimes candy and sometimes cookies. He dips the cookie in the milk, and we leave milk and carrots for the reindeers.
Your whole job is to eat chocolate chip cookies in good vitamin D homogenized milk, which I love that whole thing, and good cocoa. This is pretty much what the guy lives on.
I think the milk's a little sour.
It's soy milk.
Huh?
You said you're lactose intolerant.
For anyone at any age, it's Santa's loyalty, his punctuality, and his good cheer that keep us coming back year after year. But what really fuels the Santa myth is believing. As Christmas time approaches, the spirit of giving is everywhere. And so is Santa. We see him on street corners. He waves to us from store windows. He takes his seat each morning in all those malls. And all that can sometimes get in the way of Santa's real importance in the world. Sure, we expect the presents, but Santa delivers so much more.
With so many things in the world that maybe aren't going right, so many things that are happening in an unsure world, I think to rely on goodness and to rely on positive energy, it's very powerful.
There was always, from the beginning, something of a kind of potentially divine figure about Santa. He always played for children something of the role that God plays for everybody.
Santa's an absolutely mythological creature that I think is a kind of a friendly deity. It gives hope.
Tommy, do you believe in Santa Claus?
Sure.
I wish we had some proof, something we could see.
Well, you don't have to see something to believe in it.
I believe in Santa Claus.
I believe that there is Santa Claus.
We believe in Santa Claus! I don't think those presents are get there by magic. And Santa's cool.
Some people occasionally bring up the remark that Santa doesn't exist, but I'm pretty sure they actually all believe that he does.
I believe in Santa Claus.
I am one who believes truly in the image of Santa, the icon of Santa, the big fellow, the man in red, the man with the white beard. It's all goodness.
Adding to that goodness is the sidewalk Santa, ringing his bell, seeking donations, and providing a sense of hope. The Volunteers of America began putting Santas on the street in 1896. Their presence remains strong, but they've gone through some ups and downs. During the Second World War, with so many young men off fighting, it was hard to find volunteers, so old men stepped into Santa's boots to maintain the spirit on the home front. The Volunteers of America have 12,000 employees, but upwards of 41,000 volunteers throughout the country, providing a network of local programs, from daycare to food drives to holiday toy drives. As Christmas approaches, sidewalk Santas are raising spirits everywhere.
To see a rough and tough truck driver yell out the window, "Hey Santa, I've been good." I can't tell you how it makes my day.
So now that we know who Santa is, we're still left with the most important question of all. Is he real? At the turn of the 20th century, Americans seemed to be losing their ability to believe in things they couldn't see, including Santa Claus. In 1897, young Virginia O'Hanlon of New York City was moved to write a letter to the New York Sun.
Dear editor, I am 8 years old. Some of my little friends say there is no Santa Claus. Papa says if you see it in the sun, it's so. Please tell me the truth. Is there a Santa Claus?
And yes, Virginia got an answer from the editor himself, Francis Church. An answer for all of us.
Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. He exists as certainly as love and generosity and devotion exist. Alas, how dreary would be the world if there was no Santa Claus. It would be as dreary as if there were no Virginias.
And that editorial is really designed to reassure adults that despite the fact that we live in a doubting age, despite the fact that we live in an age of materialism, where old values are being threatened, that nevertheless, there is a Santa Claus.
I guess the gift of Christmas would be the belief that there's some great, wonderful thing that can happen in your life unbidden. And provided you aren't too naughty, it basically happens because you're there. You don't have to work for it. There are miracles.
Happy Christmas to all, and to all, a good night. A very good night.